This is an Ellis Mowers and More small engine repair. Stay connected on Instagram and Facebook at Ellis Mowers and More. Comments or questions? Leave them below or email me, ellis@ellismowers.com. Parts used in today's repair are found using the links in the description below. And as always, like and subscribe for more small engine content. On today's repair, we're going to be working on this John Deere E100. I got on a pretty good deal, actually. I was referenced to this guy, and I was told that this thing has a bad camshaft in it, but is in excellent condition, especially for the age. It's got low hours, 80-some hours. I was a little bit hesitant to buy because if y'all know John Deere, the E-Series, the 100s, have that general plastic transmission in it. So I wasn't really in a massive hurry to get this. He did, actually, it was about a month between the time that I could contact him to the time I actually did contact him. So thankfully he still had it. We're going to see if we can get this back going. It's going to be one of two things, and hopefully this is all we got to do to this thing. Best case scenario, it's got the hard starting Briggs & Stratton single cylinder Intech engine in it, 17.5 horsepower. So what happens to these is that either the valves get out of adjustment or it throws a camshaft compression release. It's done one of these two things. I was able to get it to spin over yesterday fully, and so I'm hoping that it's just the valve so I don't have to break into this thing. If I have to break into it, they're really not that hard. I'll show you in this video. I've done many other videos on this channel about breaking into the inside of these engines to change out a camshaft. Not too difficult. You do have to take the engine off of the machine though. So let's go ahead and get started with diagnosing. I'll give you a quick walk around on the mower, and then we'll get into seeing what we can do about this hard starting Briggs & Stratton. Quick walk around. This is how I got it, y'all. It's in good condition, really good condition. Hour meter's showing 80, just over 80 hours right there, 80.7. Kind of reminds me of a D105 I got a while back that had about the same amount of hours on it. Same transmission and all that mess. I think I sold that thing for $950. Just had to take it across to the other side of town, about 5 minutes. Ended up being really nice. Actually, I don't think there's anything wrong with it because I got it in an estate, part of an estate. Anyways, so far we've got a valve cover that's off right here because they were getting inspected. John Deere Tech did say that it was a camshaft. We'll see if how bad the valves are. 17.5 horsepower Briggs & Stratton. He did say that he could start it with a drill, which is kind of cool. So he'd been using it like that for a while. Again, this is the forward and reverse. It's got the plastic transmission in it, the general transmission. So that's the big negative to this machine. That Briggs & Stratton's probably the second biggest negative. I think this is the first E-Series I've ever gotten in. Oddly enough, I got two in on the same day. To me, it looks like the steering is much improved over the older models because you've got this connector linkage right here, and then your main drag link on the other side that goes to the steering instead of the two long drag links. Much, much better. He does have a mulch kit on it. I don't know what the condition of the blades and stuff are. We're going to give that a look here in a minute. Or I'll give it a look here in a second. I'll let you know. But apart from that, I mean, let's look at the oil situation. So the oil is on the add mark, so that's not bad. Looks like they had tried to take this engine cover off. So, and this piece is missing. That ain't a big deal at all. Air filter. Might have to order some air filters or something because I don't have one here. Oh, that's very passable. We can keep that in there. That's awesome. Paid a little bit of money for this, so it paid $350 for it. It looks like it was made in 2018 according to the I think I just broke that. That kind of sucks. According to the fuel line here. And the valve cover's upside down, but serial 180409, so made in April of 2018. And I just did the common thing with these and broke that, so that's not fun. I think I got another one hanging out around somewhere. I'll just swap it out. So what I can do, let me get this on the tripod here, and we'll see about pulling this over. Oh well, I suppose, right? Let me give it a head start, see if it'll try. So it stops just like that. So what I've got to do is get into this. Maybe I don't have to move this hood, but all I got to do is get into this, loosen up these valves, or loosen up this valve cover, which they've already kind of done for me. I just want to see what's going on with it. Got to make sure that the valves are in spec. If they're not, and this might be an easy fix. Come on now. Okay, so we're looking at the valves, make sure they're in spec, and if they are, then they're probably screwed. Holy cow. Yeah, it's almost certainly the compression release. Because the clearance on these look good, so we'll be pulling this engine, guys. Woo! Feeler gauge just for kicks. Check the valves. 5 thousandths. Yeah, this is actually even tighter than that. Ugh, I can feel it in the engine anyways, because it shouldn't be that hard to turn over right there. We'll make sure that the exhaust valve is at 5 thousandths too. Yeah. Hot dog, right on the money. It's funny because I got it to turn over yesterday. I didn't want to run it because the valve cover and stuff was off. So let me go ahead and get the oil drained out. I'll show you the whole quick and dirty process of getting this machine engine off of this thing. We're going to take this bad boy and swap out that camshaft. Let's do it. Alright guys, so there you saw it, about 13 minutes on the clock to get this thing off. Drain the oil out, disconnected the throttle and all that good stuff on it. Exhaust, carburetor, unplug the wiring harness, and a couple other things. A couple of extension magic in order to get the back bolts out for the engine. Not bad at all, I've seen a lot worse. Pretty good access overall if you've got the right tools. Doesn't take a lot of time. Just make sure you disconnect your negative battery cable before you disconnect the starter. That way you're not going to put yourself into any issues there. So I'm going to get it on the bench. We'll take the engine off, the sump cover off, and we're probably going to reach in there and find that we have a bad compression release. So we're going to put this back on now. The hardest part about all this is taking this gasket material off. A lot of times what I do with it, you can use a scraper, but that takes a long time. I used one of these wire brushes and a drill. Gets you pretty close to where you need to be actually, so that's good. You can see on here, I've cleaned it off some, as well as inside the engine. Just make sure your gasket material and all of those pieces from that old compression release are out. I actually turned the engine upside down and kind of shook it to get it out of the, to get the remaining pieces out of this engine. I believe we got them all. I've double checked and I don't see any more, so I think we're okay. So now we put everything back together. I have a camshaft kit here. I get these from Carb Hub off of Amazon. I'll put a link below. And these work well. I've probably put about, I don't know, 8 of them in 2 machines before. And all of them have worked. So if you think, oh, I need to go OEM Briggs, well, look at this one. It didn't last 80 hours. So what's the hurt in trying to put an aftermarket one in? So I'm going to get this out. And what we'll do is thing is about when they come in these boxes, these gaskets are really, really crinkled up, so it's a little bit difficult to get the gaskets in place. But it is you can be successful. So inside here you got a couple of lifters. We'll replace the lifters. They go in the holes on the sides here. There's 3 holes. They go on the top and the bottom. Boom. Shouldn't need that anymore. If you need oil seals, this mower doesn't need oil seals, so we won't worry about changing the seals out. But here's your camshaft, and here's this compression release mechanism that I'm talking about right here. See that? So that is what was missing on that other camshaft. You can see it basically threw itself off and decided it didn't want to, well, they call it leave the chat, right? So all you gotta do is, you can oil this stuff. It probably helps. Let me get a little, I'm gonna get a little WD-40. That'll give it a little bit of lubrication. Oil this. All right, we're gonna line up the dots here. Dots on the camshaft with the dots on the crankshaft. So we're lined up. That's top dead center. Now it's just a matter of getting this gasket out. We got to stretch this thing out. Remember, we had a bunch of Loctite on these bolts too. little bit difficult to get off if y'all saw in the time lapse there. But we're going to put this gasket back on. This one's not as bad as the others that I've had before. So it goes in the little keepers here. We're going to kind of, just trying to flex on me. So as long as you can kind of get it in the ballpark, what we can do is take the engine sump here. We do have the oil pump and all that stuff. Don't forget this thing. I forgot this one time. Had to take it all back apart. So don't forget that. We're going to put this all on here and make sure we have everything lined up with the bolts and stuff. So I've got my rubber mallet here too, which will help get us started. Don't force anything, just let it kind of make its way down there, just like so. And then, so we've got everything in the keepers. The gasket should kind of go with the flow here when it comes to coming down. Put them holes in place. Everything looks good, so as long as I can just tap this in place. Ooh, I almost forgot a critical point here, guys. Don't forget to put your governor back in either. Ooh, that'd have been a rough one. Governor. It's gonna go on that little arm right there. Make sure it goes where it needs to, guys. So monitor that while you slide this down. Again, we're going to tap it. Get it started very carefully. Just a couple of taps back and forth, and then it slides itself in. We're going to make sure our governor stays on the governor arm here, and it did not. So we'll pull it back up. Got to make sure that governor arm stays on, or that governor stays on as you're putting everything down. So, gasket came off. Constant struggle here, y'all. This was going well until I forgot the governor. So, how are we here? Governor in the slot. Yes. So now we're just going to take everything gently. Everything is lined up. Just going to gently tap it down here. What will happen is everything will just kind of fall into place, hopefully. So the oil seal is popping into place too. Alright, so the oil seal is popped into place. Ugh. Might put an oil seal on it too, guys, because that thing just kind of wrinkled its way around there. I'm going to work on this a little bit more, but that's the premise of it. Make sure you pop everything in place, see what happens. Half-inch bolts get everything back together. Be careful when you use an impact. Do not go too far, and I'll join you when we get pretty close here. Alright, so ended up off camera because I've never done one before. Put an oil seal on this. The old one actually sprung the spring whenever I tried to put it on because it tried to wrap up like that. What I learned is to take it off, have this facing up, and then I was able to take a small screwdriver and a little rubber mallet and just kind of bump it out. The new seal slid in. I used a rubber mallet to get that in and just kind of get it in place. And then once we got here, I made sure that it didn't try and do that again. So I just kind of barely took a screwdriver and just kind of pressed it in place. And then when I took the rubber mallet and tapped it down, everything stayed in place. Also make sure your governor stays in place too. Don't forget to put your oil pump back in. You can do that after you put your sump cover back on. And then we put the oil pump mechanism back on here. So the big star goes in first, little star goes in second. You just kind of have to turn it around until you get it in place. So that should be about where it needs to be. Right there. Alright, so we're in place there. We can put this cover back on. The O-ring right there fits that as the seal. We'll put that back on with a couple of 5/16. What you're going to do with a torque wrench is you're going to torque these bolts to 18 foot-pounds. Don't go more than 18 because they will shear off and then you're kind of screwed. Only thing I'm worried about is this oil seal leaking a little bit. Hopefully not. I'll double tight, or I'll make sure they're tight with the ratchet here. Like I said, you don't want them too tight. Don't want to go too much on the impact. Oh, they're good. They're more than good. Okay, 18 foot-pounds right here. This seal's bad. We'll chuck it. So we ended up needing a seal, contrary to what I thought. Lifters are in there. You can kind of put your push rods, make sure that they fall into place at least. Before we go through this whole process here. Yeah, so they're going to fall into place just fine. The lifters don't really have anywhere to go after you put that camshaft in there, so that's good. Torque these. I'm going to get it back on the mower. Mount it back. It was 4 5/8. I think y'all saw it on the time lapse. And show you everything that you need to hook back up to this thing before we start it back up. Another important thing, aside from hooking everything back up, is adjusting these valves back. So we've got a 5/8 wrench here I need to get. And a T20 Torx. So we can probably I'm just going to loosen that. Intake is on the bottom, exhaust is on the top. Change your put your rocker arms. Make sure that your push rods fit into the slot that they need to fit into. We might not even have to adjust them very much. We'll see though. Just snug, because if you go too far, you break the head off, and it's not a good day. So we'll pull this out again. Get everything situated. What you're gonna do, first off, before we start adjusting anything, is make sure your valves are where they need to be. I don't know if this one's partially, yeah, there we go. Okay, so that one's partially out. No biggie. So everything's snug. We're gonna have to adjust these things now, so they got a lot of play in them. So we're gonna get my feeler gauge. The goal is to get them to about 5 thousandths. I'll show you how to do one. You can probably do both stemming off of that. So we got my 5 thousandths out. Usually like looking at 3 thousandths and 7 thousandths, because if I'm at 3, between 3 and 7 usually, I think one of them's between 4 and 6, and the other one's between 5 and 7 or something like that. But we're gonna do, loosen that. Tighten them down some because they're a little loose. Make sure you're on top dead center or where both valves are closed. Whether you need to see that valve in some in order to know, you can do that. Or you can get it at top dead center, whatever you feel it's easiest for you. We're just gonna trial and error right here, trial and error. So we're very close right there. That's very close. At 5 thousandths. Usually I'm not that close on the second try. Let me get my 7 thousandths out just to make sure that I'm in okay shape here. Where is it? There's the 7. So I could go a tiny bit more then. And we're talking about minuscule amounts here. We're not talking about much at all. There's my 5 thousandths. That's really close. And make sure that the 7 can't fit anymore. Just barely. 4 thousandths fits through. So we're in about the range where we need to be. You want to be about 5 thousandths. Can't get the 7th in. 5 barely fits. 4 definitely fits. So we go down here and we'll do the other one just the same way. You loosen that with a T20 Torx. Tighten it in. Pretty loose. I bet these lifters are a little bit shorter or something. But either way, we're going to work just fine. I'm going to finish this bottom valve just like I did the top valve. And go ahead and put everything back on. I'll show you everything that you need to put back on, including oil. You're going to scrape off this gasket right here as well. And I've got a gasket for the valve cover. It just fits right on there. Make sure all this mess is rubbed off. Tighten it to spec. Put your exhaust on, intake on. All your wiring and ground wires and stuff, put them on. Route your coil wire. Connect your starter. Plug your wiring harness back in and connect the battery. Connect your throttle. I think that's it. I'll show you the finished product before we get this thing started. Alright guys, so let me show you what I've done already. Wiring is set up. Hook back up. Again, this ground wire goes to this little provision on the tin, and we've got all this hooked up underneath the oil dipstick tube here. Ground voltage regulator grounded right here. Everything hooks into each other. The 6-prong hooks up right there. There is a yellow or a black or a gray wire that goes underneath the machine that hooks under in a little clip that you'll see under there. If you get down there, there's a ground right here, and this is your anti-backfire solenoid. All right, so in terms of all that, that's what you got. Hook the battery up just for the kicks. It's not going to crank, obviously, but you can see with the plug in, it's turning a lot better now, so that's good. I'm going to finish putting everything else back together, and then we should be done here pretty shortly. Well, moment of truth time. Full of oil. Like I said, I've put everything back together. Fuel pump. Give you guidance on what that's supposed to look like. It was a little messy with the oil. I just changed the oil filter. The line coming from the bottom is going to go on your top. Your pulse is coming from the oil dipstick tube. That's going to go on the outside always. The pulse on the outside always. And then the bottom over here going over to the carburetor. We've hooked the carburetor up. Oh, we left the 7/16 socket in there, which we'll get out here in just a second. There we go. 10 millimeter, you hook up your linkages. You make sure your choke is in the right spot. Throttle. I usually leave it at full throttle, get it as close to this little choke arm as possible. Make sure that choke arm goes through the little slot there. And then this has got one of them spring back chokes. So you want to make sure, that's where I like to set the throttle at full throttle. Where it's just under the choke whenever you have it at full throttle. And that's about perfect. So, one other nugget that I noticed, I took the mulch cover off. He's got gator blades, and y'all notice those blades are upside down, so that means I don't have to put any new blades on. I just have to turn them around, so that's awesome. I'm going to pull this outside, and we're going to start it up. Hopefully the carburetor's not gummed up. We're going to try it, and if it works, great. We'll let it run. I'm not going to run it full throttle for a while. I'm going to let everything lube up again, about half throttle for a little bit. Cut grass with it and all that good stuff after I air the tires up, change the blades out, and then we'll clean it up and hopefully be done with it. So this is awesome. Let's do this. Alright, I think it'll start. Hopefully it will. Okay, here we go. Let it sit here for a little bit. All that oil that's got to burn off of the muffler, inside the muffler and all that stuff. Sounds good though, started right up too, so that's awesome. I might see if the transmission goes forward and backwards just to make sure. Turn on real quick too, why not? Muffler's got a lot of oil to burn off, so we'll let it do its thing, and I'll show y'all after I clean everything up and whatnot how it looks. So just finished a successful mow with this. I do want to mention these John Deeres have that. It's, in my opinion, one of the worst mow and reverse systems, especially on these lower levels, because you have to use basically two hands at the same time in order to do it. You have to push this button in and shift it into reverse. Also, this mower will not start in reverse. I learned that after trying to start it for like 3 or 4 minutes a couple days ago. But anyways, all I did, basically just ran a jumper wire in between that, and it works just fine. Basically acts like the button's pushed all the time, so you just throw it in reverse, cut in reverse. If the buyer wants for me to take that out, I can do that very easily instead of having to cut wires and stuff. Just ran that little jumper and we were good. This mower is going to be really, really nice. It's a very successful mow. I can see if I can figure out if I can find one of these and one of these to top it off, but most people don't look at that little engine details. They look at the machine itself. Looking at my work, it ran great, drove great, shifting fine, even though that plastic transmission's in it. Just looking very carefully, it does look like we had a little bit of seepage through the gasket right on this side, but not to the point where it's dripping or anything along those lines, which is great. I like saving the good stuff for the nice machines, and so we are gonna, instead of the cheap stuff, we're gonna get the good stuff here and throw a little bit of Super Clean on. So I'm gonna wash this machine up. Going to go ahead and spray it and give it a little quick spritz of water. That way the Super Clean doesn't eat off any paint or anything, because it is a very strong cleaner. Time lapse y'all on this. We'll get it all cleaned up and we will be done here very shortly. So I think y'all saw basically the grease and grime and stuff melt away. There's always a little bit of a residual whenever it comes to stuff that I need to get off, but remember we had it kind of caked in dirt. Still a little bit on the front, but I mean this is basically cleaned up to almost new condition. So is the hood. I mean it looks great. I just need to do one quick little spritz with it, one final run around. Engine is looking excellent too. I'll show it to you when everything gets dry, but I do want to show you, by the way, Super Clean, excellent. I do want to show you how easy it starts now. Well, it did. I mean, it's just like, even when I cold started this morning, it was just like boom right off the bat. So that's excellent. hop on this thing. I'll give y'all a final look and mow with it while we're here. Again, so I got the reverse I fixed. We're gonna go up on the deck. So I can even engage the blades in reverse now. Forward. Maybe so that's nice. Idles down good. I mean, everything you expect for a mower with 81 hours on it. Nothing crazy. Wheels are aligned. Runs good, drives good, cuts great. Gonna work out well for somebody. So let me get it down back to the garage. We'll wrap this video up. So there it is, guys. John Deere E100 ready to roll. I think we ended up having a good buy here. It took an afternoon to swap the camshaft out. Took another afternoon to put give it a little test and clean, and we got about probably 4 or 5 hours in it. Paid $350 for it. Probably gonna list it for $1,100 because I can't get Long Island money down here in North Carolina. Long Island money would be $2,000 for this thing. Realistically, it's gonna sell for around $1,100, probably close to $1,000. Looks great. What stinks is it's got that Briggs single cylinder, and it's got, excuse me, that plastic transmission in the back. Luckily, all that's working good now that we fixed the camshaft. It's just hard to believe that it's a 2018 model. The camshaft lasted 80 hours on it. So, and from what I've been reading, I don't think you can get the Briggs ones hardly anymore anyway. So, link is in the description below to the camshafts that I use. They're the carb hub ones, and I have put probably about 7 or 8, if not more, in. So we've got, and they've all been successful. None of them have come back. None of them. This one probably the first now that I've said that. Either way, thank you all again for watching. If you have any questions about this video, feel free to reach out to me, and or put it in the comments section. But we turned out really nice, y'all. Need to start doing these more often because these are quick fixes and quick flips, and they make really good money compared to the stuff that I drag out of the backyard. Either way, thank y'all again, and I will catch y'all on the next video. Probably the nicest machine you're going to see me have this year. So, hope y'all enjoyed it. Take care.